Welcome everybody, welcome to 360 Coaching with Premier Teaching and Learning. Today I have an amazing person. He is Dr. KevinBerkopes. Yay! Hello.
Hello. Great to be with you. I got a special visitor today on my team. I got to introduce him to you all. So I have Andrew Solomon. He's Chief of Finance and Programming here at Crossroads Education. He's the yin to my yang here at Crossroads. Can't wait to tell you more about what we do.
Andrew, it's great to meet you. We love anybody who's connected to Dr. Berkopes. Let me just say that.
I hope to keep that true throughout today.
Sandra, it's an honor to be here today. It's always an honor to be alongside Dr. KevinBerkopes.
Yes. So to just give you some frame of reference, Kevin has been an amazing mentor and just an outstanding person just to hang around. And so he's kind of guided me through this transition to just express myself. And so Kevin is the leader, owner, CEO, founder of Crossroads Education, which is the educational technology, provides services for a company here in the state of Indiana. So if you are here, you have to look him up and go see him and his company. And so they formed a successful learning commons that him and his passionate peer groups and Andrew over there that actually work with peer educators. And it started at IUPUI, which was where I work now. And so the Learning Commons is a model of just technology augmented with enabled learning program and a platform for core learning and content domains. And we're going to dig more into that and what that means, because I know you're dying to learn more about that. And so he developed this Learning Commons, which was designed kind of as a result of the needs of our current educational system. And it's a big pushback and a resistance to change. So that is why he is one of my invites, and I love him to death. So welcome, Kevin.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you. So you want me to take you through just why we do what we do and how it looks and where and how these things came about. So, Crossroads, and this is Cassandra and I first started to really meet, and she talks about mentorship. I would say we have a back and forth friendship instead of a mentorship role. She's just as entrepreneurial as I am, and we connected on that because that's not necessarily a norm at the higher ed level when you're a professor. They don't necessarily push you to be entrepreneurial. I'm sort of born that way for good reason or unfortunate reasons. I'll let you all decide. So what we picked up on over the years is I have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in mathematics, but prior to those things, I traveled the country and worked in the K-12 system. And I worked in a lot of things, sort of my own inquiry of trying to balance and understand what I knew or thought I knew poverty was, inequities were, and then what I came to understand, which is that they were way different, way worse, more big problems than what I originally had assumed from my own just small world that I grew up in. So I balanced sort of these poles in my background of poverty in an urban area with my immigrant family, and then rural areas with my farming family. And as I went to these different places, I worked with a lot of young people who were balanced between urban and rural, and poverty is poverty. But there are differences, there's nuances on what it means for scarcity in certain places in regards to resource. And so we traveled, and I learned that software is a beautiful thing, and that creating it is an amazing process, but I also learned that it's not the solution to education in regards to equity, because it's a tool. And tools don't solve problems that are people problems. So we started to work through this idea that education is about trust, and you don't learn from people that you don't trust. And so I kind of wondered aloud with teams and teams of really talented people over the years of what is an equitable talent population, what is the workforce of education that could provide the promise of equity but actually deliver? And I don't think adults solve this problem. I'm a teacher advocate. I love teachers. My mom was a 40-year teacher on the South Side. but teachers are asked to do 90 hours of work a week, and they only have 40 to do it. And so we're trying to figure out what is that workforce, and where we landed was, kids. So kids are in every school, they're in every university, they're highly talented, highly qualified to work with each other. They have the trust thing established, they have shared language, shared experience that us old folks can't reproduce. And if we think about them not as passive learners, but actually as somebody that can contribute to the sort of tiered system of education that we can provide, then now we have that workforce that we've been looking for. So way back in 2012, 2013, I got a chance to build that at the higher ed level. And I think Cassandra may agree that the MAC was pretty successful in those original models. And we learned a lot about how undergraduates can work together and deliver core content for 42 math classes to the tune of about 600 visits a day to a 3,500 square foot facility. We built a second one in 2015, and it just kept going from there. All of that success was met with an immense amount of pushback, which means we're on to something in education. So we disrupted a system. We rendered obsolete some of the ideas that you have to have certain things going on to learn. And that pushback was phenomenal and rather unpleasant. But it pushed me to think entrepreneurially about, can this work in high schools? Can it work in elementary schools? Can it work in middle schools? And so in 2017, we got our first high school. Then we started scaling from there. We were funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that got us into more schools, but also taught us that 8-year-olds can teach. And then we now have a K through 16 approach where we're in schools all over Indiana, where they're delivering this learning commons model, which is peer tutoring, where we get the opportunity to tutor 200 students a week, up to 400 hours of content and differentiated instruction, both on-site and virtually. We build these awesome rooms that have whiteboard walls and everything you can write on, get your ideas out of your head and in front of somebody else. We build things like collaboration, and then we talk about and value things like joy, hope, belonging, things that are missing in the current education model only because we don't have enough time to talk about them. And so we bring those back in. We're talking about parenting. We're talking about helping raise babies that we care about. We're talking about all those things because, frankly, math, computer science, learning, that happens when you feel balanced, protected, that you're joyful and hopeful. Those things all take care of themselves. And now we have the research over the years to prove it. Once we have peers working together, we have some of our schools that have come to us with 2 to 3 years behind in content proficiency. By the time we're done working with them in the first year, they're on grade level. And that's not a heavy lift at all. The young people are capable of doing this in every school. We just have to work with more and more school leaders to understand that they don't have to lift this burden alone. We can help, and we can provide that sort of support. I think it's really interesting to get another perspective. You all can see how passionate I am about this. I'm going to ask Andrew to fill in the blanks from another side. So this is the founder's hat, right? The person that spent his career trying to do these things. But he came into this from a different perspective where he saw what he saw when he was a mentor at one of the schools that we work in. And then now he works for me full time and has abandoned his other career because he drank the juice, which is awesome. But I think you should hear from him for a second.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So I'll spare you my background for the sake of time, but what you can know about my background is in construction and real estate, I have to boil things down very simply to communicate. So what I really see in summary, and you can hear Kevin's passion, to summarize, is that young students are behind in math. There's not enough teachers, and the kids are really affected with each other. So we built a program to address that problem, which I think we're about to probably explain. And it's very scalable, so it can move across the country very quickly because the kids are already at every school across the country. So hopefully that kind of tells you about my personality.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, right? So, Cassandra, this is something that you and I know. Like founders, we have one way, one frame. We're thinking, we're passionate, we're hitting it every day when we get up in the morning. If I have one superpower, it's that I can surround myself with others who can fill in the gaps with what I am incapable of doing while I'm doing this as a founder. And that's the beautiful thing about what Crossroads is now and some of the other businesses that I own, that I have such interesting, wonderful people working with me every day on things that we are super passionate about. So let me take you through a little bit of the presentation. Oh, go ahead.
Give me a quick second, because I want to unpack a lot of the things that you said, which is kind of what we need right now. And what Kevin brings is not only the personal relationships between peer-to-peer, but he gives students a platform to be a leader. And that is not prevalent in our current context in schools. And then if you see their place, if you kind of look and peer into their background, he's right. The whiteboards, the clear screens, the latest technology, students are movable desks. They have just options to, create their own classroom as educators. So I think this is something, it's not only something that you should hear from Kevin, but you got to go see what this looks like, and the power of students' confidence going into these spaces and seeing how students are prepared and they've learned the content backwards and forwards, where they can teach different, they can even differentiate instruction. So we're really creating a next generation of teachers, learners, and even entrepreneurs in a sense. So I just want to make sure I put that on the board, because like I said, this is one key of just brilliant thinking of how we can support the next generation.
Yeah, thanks. So it is true. When they get a chance to create their own learning environments, they create the things that they want, that they feel, and that's, we can talk about it in education sense of differentiated instruction, individualized instruction, but do we ever ask kids what they want? And that's such a hard thing for adults to do, and I'm just sort of wired this way. So I want to know what these people that I'm with every single day, who could be anything from a kindergartner that has to hold hands and line up and go to the restroom and get drinks, or an undergraduate or a graduate student. Like, I want to know what they want, and then I don't want to deviate from that. If a student came to me and said, "Listen, I'm cool with getting a C in a college math course. I just need to get through this because I want to be an occupational therapist," like, at least you know that. Right? Because you asked, and forcing them in the small amount of time that you have together, like, ask what people want. So we're working through this idea, and what you see on your screen is we have these problems, right? So the problems in the education system is that we have really low math proficiency. Indiana specifically, but this is nationwide. It's a U.S. problem. It's a world problem, but it's a U.S. problem because of the culture around mathematics and how we teach it. And we teach it in certain ways that are linear and non-recursively elaborated. We use words all the time that scare the hell out of people, and it's just math, friends. Like, it's a language. And when you say that you're a language person, or you say that you're a literacy person, and then you say you're not a math person, like, that doesn't compute for me. Because if you're a language person and you're a human, then you're a math person. It's just that we put this weird disconnect in there. So we recognize this low math proficiency problem. We also know that tutoring really works. It's highly inequitable the way it was originally designed, which is only when rich kids can pay for private tutoring, but we know it works. And so back in the 80s, early 80s, Bloom basically put out a 2 sigma problem. He said, look, tutoring works. We've vetted it. We've researched it. When they're a highly trained tutor and they can work with kids in small groups, it is so much better than lecture that they're not even close. 2 deviations ahead. Okay, then how do we get that to be affordable? And we went around and around, like, okay, we got technology can tutor, we've got adaptive learning, we've got all these things, but you're missing the point. Tutoring is about personal connection. So how do we recreate personal connection for all of these kids? One way to think about it is, let's pay an army of adults. Well, that's highly unaffordable, right? We already can't afford having just a classroom teacher in front of 35 kids, let alone, one-to-one. So we started to say, well, what if we scaled it to where we use technology and peers, students, and now we've got 26 or 30 or 80 tutors, and they're available to students, and we can create that. Students are super pumped about having something to do at school to serve others. And if there was an opportunity and we paid them, they'd be really pumped with $100 a week. And you and I would not be pumped about that, especially with how hard we work in education. So that's what you see on this screen. How do we take this, which is low math proficiency, and move it over with the fact that tutoring works, and then how do we make them highly affordable? And this is what we do at Crossroads. So here's what a Learning Commons looks like for all of you to take a look. It is a high impact classroom, right? We've got seating in multiple tiers. We have tracking. We have 65-inch touchscreens. We have a user experience that feels good when you go in. We care about that. But if you look here, this picture, this is a mix of tutors and students. Can you tell the difference?
Yes.
Good. Right? So they're working together, they're collaborating, they're serving each other. I can't tell you which one the tutor is and which one the student is because I don't want to. Because they're both learning, they're both developing, they're both serving, they're both collaborating. So we've built this model to where an adult runs and manages the space and does do tutoring, but the students are tutoring each other beneath our platform of what we call Learning Commons, which is we don't tell answers to questions. We help you with inquiry. We provide you with resources. We allow you in school gasp to Google stuff, right? Like you have access to the entire history of human knowledge on this thing. Use it. Right? So let's use that and learn. We provide the other technology that we've made because we believe having the best tools supplemented by the best tutors, which is students and adults, then we've got something that is highly equitable and really works. Next is we have outcomes. So this isn't like I hope and a dream that this works. We've been doing this for a long time. We have schools where they are performing at the 98th and 99th percentile in terms of growth because they're being tutored by students. Not because we brought in a whole new army of adults. We just took the kids at that school and trained them. And we have these results all over the state of Indiana now, urban, rural, you name it. We know that we can work with young people and have them perform at a level that is not typical in the schools. We can have an entire middle school that serves 100% free and reduced lunch kids all on grade level. Wow. So find me another one. Let me know what that looks like because I'd love to meet how they're doing it. But I know we're doing it, and this is what it looks like for us.
Kevin, example.
Go ahead.
So you've been doing this for a while now, and I know you're in major areas in Indiana. How has this changed? What are some changes that you're having to modify due to COVID and supporting the fall year? Because I know you are pushing into many schools. So what are some changes that you see coming?
Yeah, so big changes. So the changes are, if you look at the spaces in this slide, those are at school. They're beautiful. We designed them. We bought the furniture. We populated them. Guess what? That got ripped away, right? So the really neat thing is that we have an online virtual learning platform that's just like this, but only it's virtual. And so we're working now really heavily with our internal team and also with the teachers that are on our client sites and administrators to say, as soon as school becomes something that you can't go to, then we flip a switch and the tutoring still happens at home. Giving people purpose when they are quarantined, where they have a job, especially a young person, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they're running hour sessions or half-hour sessions or 20-minute tutoring sessions. It really worked when we got slammed with this in the spring. And now moving into the fall, we know that since we have lessons learned, now what we're going to do is much more strategic. So we've been working really hard on how do we use our platform to deliver that joy and hope and core content. Especially when school gets taken away. So a lot of our new clients, including Cathedral High School and some of the other schools in Indianapolis, we're really training from day one to say, look, school's going to get shut down again. So let's make sure that we're talking about it, that we understand why, Let's be comfortable with the fact that when you go home, you're not just going to sit on your couch and play video games. You're going to do stuff to make yourself better, because it's what is a pathway to joy and healthy living and a long, life, what we call a life of thriving. And then let's hold each other accountable. Let's make sure that you have work and learning and a diversity of experience when you're e-learning or at home. And that's really what we've created with the Learning Commons, is that this is a program that switches on when these things come necessary. And virtual tutoring works. Like, I'm getting along great with you all right now. We're connected on a two-dimensional screen, but listen, you can create with proper sort of techniques that the technology industry has known for a long time. I can run a remote team, and I know them, right? You just have to have a different type of touch point, a different type of relational touch point, where we do see each other, we do talk, but we also conduct ourselves and openly, how are you, right? No, how are you really? Yeah. And we don't do that in the physical space, because we can over rely on sort of our ability to see you. Yeah. And that's being taken away from us, so we got to get better at this. And we also need to get better at thinking that a young person is a client or a customer, and we need to drive value for them when they're home, so that we think about what they care about, what they need, and differentiate that as education would allow us to do. So last couple of things. I know I want to cover all of what we do, but we have a robotics program now. It's called Rover Code. It's a company that I own. We created it because we needed equitable access to the tech industry. Right now it is completely and totally inequitable. The level of diversity at the major tech companies is so small, both in race, gender, you name it. And we think it's because the lack of access to mathematics plays a role. You have to take a certain sequence of mathematics courses when you get into the university. And we know from research that young people that have a lack of background training, which are often those that come from low resource communities, when they get into college, if they make it, math kills them. And it's because of this lack of background training. Not only that, we need to expose people to understand that you can be a builder or a creator of technology, not just a consumer. And we don't have a lot of access to that in the communities that I work in and have always been passionate about working in. So Rover Code is, you build a robot. You actually build it, you code it, you construct it, you go through tutorials, and you actually do all of this. You do JavaScript software development, and it's fun. It's something that can be deployed by anybody. We didn't have anything like that on the market, so we made it. And then now we're deploying it in dozens and dozens of schools in Indiana this year, and it's going really well. We see a lot of young people are starting to get interested in, like, oh, so this is what this is, instead of like, well, that's something that I can't do. And that's only the things that you believe about yourself and what you can't do when you have a lack of understanding of what that thing is. That's that stereotype threat. That's those sorts of things where you think something is until you see it. And we're trying to remove sort of those barriers for young people. So that's the end. That's Crossroads. That's what we do. I'm passionate about it. You can't hide that. But this is something that we're going to continue to fight this battle on behalf of children who currently are, and I mean, this is everywhere now. People finally get really how inequitable our society is, both in access to high-speed internet, to really good education, the racial and social injustices that you see out there right now. People are really starting to talk about it, and I'm with my team, we're over here like, hey, we've been fighting this for 2 decades. I'm glad you're all waking up, but let's do something real about it instead of talk. And that's what we want to do every day when we wake up.
No, I totally agree. I'm just thinking of we're finally at the table, right? And these things are being discussed, and even at higher ed, it still hasn't really resonated with, maybe it's time to change our curriculum to meet the needs of the current learner. And so I definitely get it, and I'm excited about what you're doing, and I know it's gonna get better and better as time comes along.
We'll definitely get better every day. We don't have everything figured out. I'll be the first to admit that. But what I've learned about being an entrepreneur and a startup is that you have to create programming and resource so that you can outdistance your early mistakes. Once you get a market fit, then it's your job to grow, and it's how fast and how good you can do after that is up to the type of people you surround yourself with. And we have some of the best, and Cassandra seems to like us, so that should rank pretty high, right?
All right, well, that was amazing. Make sure you follow him on his social media and make sure you click the link because he just has so much to offer and so much to give. And Crossroads, if you are a principal or an instructional leader, make sure you connect and reach out. So he is definitely willing to support your school with math. Any other questions? Other than that, talk to you later, Kevin.
See ya.